Hey everyone, this is Mr. P and Dave. We are the Geeky Guys, and this is a Tea Break podcast special.
It is, Mr. P, that's right. It's a Christmas festive special, and it's even more special this episode because we've got a special guest again. You may know him for his work on Doctor Who, the Sarah Jane Adventures, Fantastic Fear of Everything. He's a creature performer, a filmmaker, photographer, a little bit of a skater boy. I'm delighted to say with us this time, we've got Mr. Jon Davey.
Hello.
Hey,
hello.
Welcome to Tea Break podcast. Thanks for coming on and talking to us.
You're welcome.
We were quite excited about this one because, we're going to talk a little bit about your Doctor Who work, creature work. And when we actually looked at the list of actual creatures you've portrayed, it was like immense.
It's a lot.
It's quite varied.
Impressive is the word you're looking for, isn't it?
Thank you, Dave. Yes, impressive. I would go so far as to say very impressive.
Yeah.
So this is going to be fun to find out
ins and outs of being a creature performer, really, and background artist and all that sort of thing.
Yes. Well, I guess I can rewind back to 2003. My agent basically said, can you go for an audition in Cardiff, not actually saying what it was for, and it was the BBC studios, the old BBC studios in Llandaff. And I turned up, I can't remember the guy's name, I gave another guy a lift because I knew him. And there was probably about 30 of us there. I think we may have been told it was actually for Doctor Who, but I can't quite remember. But we met a lovely lady called Elsa Burke, who's the choreographer for Doctor Who. And we spent a day doing various movement exercises, marching around, walking around with our eyes closed, spatial awareness, that type of thing. And when we went to sign out at the end of the day, I believe it was Steph Morris, who's still working on the show as the line producer. He said this was an audition to be the Cybermen in Doctor Who, which was pretty amazing. Oh, and by the way, you're not allowed to tell anyone.
Yeah, that's the worst.
So yeah, that was pretty special. And being a fan of Doctor Who as a kid, you know, I got the butterflies in my stomach going like, oh my God, this is an amazing opportunity, and fingers crossed. And I really hope that I impressed Elsa enough. We then got another call back to go to Millennium Effects, the company that made the Cybermen as well as most of the creatures for Doctor Who. So we travelled up to it's either Cheshire or Amersham because they've moved. I think it was Amersham where they were based, and we tried part of the costume on because it was still being built at the time. Tried the head on, and they said, "Oh, you know, is it okay?" And I was like, "Yes, it's fine." So that was pretty amazing, and then eventually got the call to actually be a Cyberman on the show. And the first night that I did was it was a scene which was outside the president's house, where actually the first actual thing we did was just our feet marching down the ramp off of a trailer, which I think was actually used in a different scene, but they just needed to get that pickup shot. But the subsequent days were outside the president's house, lots of marching across the grass, chasing people around the inside of the house, lots of standing still with our arms out stretched, which standing still is actually a lot more difficult than moving.
Yeah.
Believe
Yeah,
it or not.
Season up.
The costumes weighed around about 4 stone in weight. They were made out of fiberglass, coated in an aluminium dust coating. And we were wearing an undersuit, which was kind of like a wetsuit. So the whole costumes were pretty heavy. And movement was a lot better, but inertia is our enemy, really. And some of the toughest times were literally standing still. We had to have our hands clenched as well. And the gloves were made out of silicon, so the silicon was wanting to sort of, you're fighting against the silicon all the time. So yeah, it was fun times. It was kind of tough because we couldn't see very well. We only had limited vision. And the eyes were blacked out, but they were blacked out with like a gauze, like a stocking gauze. And as soon as we looked towards a light, you would kind of get this whiteout effect. So it was really challenging to start with, but great fun.
So what's the turnaround like in time for getting the costume on and off? The Cybermen.
I guess it depends on how many people are there helping us, but I'd probably say round about 10-15 minutes, something like that. And we'd get our undersuit on, and there's lots of talcum powder used to slide on all the various arms and legs and stuff like that.
Yeah, but the prosthetics people are 18 years, like they're hours having all this stuff put on, makeup and things glued everywhere, and it's a little bit easy for something like that when it's 10-15 minutes, isn't it?
It is, yes,
but it has its own challenges, like you said.
It does. It was kind of the weight and also the compression on your body. And the thing is that obviously you don't want to complain because it's your job. But later on, I heard Patrick Stewart talking about when he did Next Generation, and the first series of Next Generation, they wore a one-piece, which then changed to a two-piece because he said that the one-piece and the compression on his body was just giving him back problems constantly. So
they designed them at a size smaller on purpose. So if they were a size 12 or whatever, they gave them a size 10. So they made them smaller on purpose so they were skin tight. Yeah.
Right.
Like jumpsuits, weren't they?
Yeah, that's why they changed.
Pretty much.
Said, look, we're not doing this anymore. You would.
I was going to say, actually, previously, about was you a fan of the show previously before you got into working on Doctor Who? When did you come into Doctor Who? Was it sort of when you was quite young, like as a child, or did you get into it later on? Or
yeah, I was fairly young. Showing my age now, I can't remember what the first episode was, but I can remember watching The Hand of Fear. Tom Baker, Talons as well. Yeah. Lots of them. It was back in the 70s when I was watching it.
Yeah, we've always had the problem, Mr. P, haven't we? Where we got into Doctor Who in sort of the mid 80s when it was just winding down. With JNT, obviously Peter Davidson and Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, and then obviously we had the hiatus. So we didn't get a big deal of Doctor Who when we was younger, so it was a case of watching repeats, and then obviously it was fantastic when it came back in 2005.
Gold had the omnibus edition. You used to play it like 2 a.m, and you put a VHS. Record the whole 2-hour thing so you could watch it the next day. That's what I used to do anyway. And yes, I said VHS, so we're all showing our age, aren't we, really?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Well, we didn't have a colour television, so I saw it all in black and white.
I'm saying nothing else about age now. That's
well, I don't think it's not necessarily age. It's just my dad was so tight he wouldn't pay for a colour TV licence until 1991.
Right.
I was going to ask, actually, when you're filming the scenes in costume as a Cyberman, for example, we always see on screen, in certain scenes, we see a lot of Cybermen in the scene. Is that always filmed with lots of extras, or do you generally film that with just a small selection and then it's made to look like
added in digitally?
Yeah, well, hold on, where's my picture gone?
Yeah.
There I am, back again. So there were 12 costumes basically. So if you watch the scenes where the Doctor and Rose are escaping the Cybermen, they'll be chased by 12 Cybermen, then go around the corner and go, oh look, there's another 12 Cybermen after us. So it was pretty much all the same guys who were doing it, and we had our cyber leader, a guy called Paul Casey, that played pretty much most of the lead monsters, and we were his sort of backup posse. And Paul's gone on to working on the new Star Wars movies.
Of course, yeah, we saw that, didn't we?
Pretty much been on that for 5 years, playing a lot of the characters and being in charge of the choreography as well.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't realise
that's cool.
Behind the scenes of Star Wars, I didn't realise it was him that did that until I saw that. And I was like, ooh, I know that name. That name.
Although we were saying before we came on, wasn't we? I think your chin appeared for 10 seconds on Rogue One or something, didn't it?
Yeah.
So you got some parts of your anatomy there.
Yeah, so I was quite lucky to have done, it was about 3 or 4 days in that Jeddah village scene. And I didn't do any creature work, but it's like, wow, I'm in a Star Wars movie. And it was amazing to actually to see, and it was part of the what they call reshoots, but it's not necessarily reshoots. All movies have what's called reshoots, but it's just extra scenes that they need to get, but you only have actors for a certain period of time, and then you got to schedule other things. But it was pretty amazing. It was a very, very well oiled machine, and it was probably costing like $1 million a day. Rumor had it, so so everything was like on point as such. But it was good, and I did see another friend of mine, Aidan Cook, who also worked on Star Wars. So him and Paul were characters called the Two Tubes. Which, if you do watch it, they've got 2 tubes coming out of their mouths. I think, were they kind of like bounty hunters or just sort of general rascallions?
Rapscallion, that's the one.
Yeah. So
so.
I saw Aidan there, which was nice. But yeah, I literally walked past camera, and you see my chin for about 1 second. But a funny thing, or it wasn't funny at the time, but they were shooting the scene of Jin and Cassian talking in the Jeddah village scene, and one of the assistant directors basically kind of had a line of us, and they were wiping us, which is basically just pushing us through shot, so it looks like there's people passing left and right. And basically he had hold of me and he pushed me in front of the camera just at the same time that the camera operator, which I can't remember his name, I think he was actually the director of photography for the Star Wars movies, he's very accomplished, decided just to step in with the camera. So they're shooting this scene, I get thrown in front of the camera, he pushes in the camera, and I end up knocking the front of the camera. And the thing is bad enough for one of your lead actors to blow their lines and ruin a shot, let alone me, who's just a wipe. And I hit the camera, and I literally, I could have just died. I was like, oh my God. And I felt about that small.
You would.
And then when the next take happened, the chap basically came up to me and said, he goes, this time I'm not going to be stepping forward, so you got nothing to worry about. That was just so nice, and it's kind of testament to the people on the top of their game aren't the ones that will scream and shout at you for doing something wrong. They understand that things can go wrong. So that was a really nice experience to actually encounter.
Yeah, at least you got those comments afterwards, so you didn't feel bad.
You could go the other way and just say, he attacked me with a camera. That's
yeah.
For that, you should give me a bigger role.
Yeah.
More screen time.
I got a feeling that I did, when they said cut, I put my hands up, like, kind of like, sorry.
Really?
And I think it's always a good thing admitting to your mistakes instead of trying to
cover it up,
blame someone else. You always got to admit to your mistakes.
Yeah, definitely.
Just step back slightly to a lot earlier on. You were interested in photography or camera. So you've kind of gone from sort of taking photos to being on camera. Is photography still something you're interested in? You do a lot of.
It is. I left school at the age of 16, not really with any qualifications or not knowing what I wanted to do in life. Kind of took the advice from the careers advisors, and you probably understand what that entailed. They'll look at your grades and then basically just make up a career that you're supposed to spend the rest of your life doing. And obviously, being a kid when you're young, you're like, well, adults know best, as such, or you would hope to believe that. And I don't know. I think they just said, working on a building site or something. Okay, if you say so.
Enough.
But I left school and I literally just started through jobs left, right, and centre. I'd spend 2-3 months doing something, and I just didn't want to do it. And a lot of people would just go, just stick it out. And in hindsight, thinking back, it just wasn't for me. And it's like,
no,
a lot of people kind of fall into a trap where you just do something and then you go, well, this is the way it is. And then years down the line, you start having regrets, and you have financial commitments that you then can't leave your job or your career because you're like, well, I can't, I've got a mortgage, I've got a family, I just got to carry on working, doing this thing that I don't want to do. So I guess I was very much the mindset of, if it doesn't make me happy, I'm not doing it, which sometimes to my detriment, I'm still kind of like that today. So I find it very easy to walk away from something that doesn't fulfill me.
Yeah, it's totally right though, that is. I think you do your best work when you're enjoying it and you're relaxed and you're happy with what you're doing in the space you're in at that point, aren't you? I think that's definitely the way to be.
Yeah, but one thing, I bought a camera off a friend of mine, a Praktica SLR camera, and basically, showed me roughly how to do it, and then I took some photographs, and then took the photographs in to be developed, and I was like, wow, this kind of looks amazing. So I kind of did that for quite a few years. I then ended up working in various different camera shops, which was generally kind of just funding my hobby of photography. And then eventually I started doing some wedding photographs and stuff like that. And again, I didn't find that very fulfilling, because it was like, I'm earning a bit of money. I'm taking some other people's wedding photographs. It's their big day, but I don't really care about it, to be fair.
No, it's just a bit of money, isn't it?
Yeah. Then started doing a little bit of commercial work, photographing bottles of wine, which was just as boring, but it paid quite well. And then, when I was in the camera shop, I borrowed a video camera and then just started making short, silly films and a couple of music videos for friends of mine. And one thing kind of led to another, and then I ended up working. I started off as a runner, which is basically it does what it says on the tin. You're there and you go to the supermarket, get this, collect that stuff. and it was for a music video for Radiohead.
Right.
And that was from Hail to the Thief album, and the music video was called There. And that was filmed in Bristol, and it was filmed at a company called Bolex Brothers that specialise in stop motion animation. And the director, Chris Hopewell, he also worked there, and basically he directed this kind of weird part live action, part stop motion video. And yeah, I think 3 days into it, I then got promoted to shooting all of the animation from being a runner. And also as well, they were basically talking about how they were going to shoot all the stop motion stuff. And because I've been doing, because I've been doing, I don't know if I'm disappearing. I got someone trying to ring me. Because I've been doing digital photography, I just said, well, can't you shoot the stop motion animation on digital cameras? Because, you know, the resolution's way better than video. And I don't think many people have actually sort of were doing it back then. So I spent a couple of days doing like a proof of concept, and it worked. And pretty much all stop motion animation is all shot on digital cameras now. So that was back in blimey, when was that? That was 2002, 2003. So we spent sort of 8 to 10 years shooting various music videos for artists such as the Scissor Sisters, the Killers, the Bees, the Young Knives.
You was already a bit of a fan of Radiohead as well, wasn't you?
Yeah. I was a big. Well, that was when OK Computer came out in the late 90s. That was the thing that my friends kind of turned me on to with Radiohead, and you know, it is still now voted one of the sort of best albums of all time.
Yeah, it's a classic album, that one, isn't it?
Yeah. So that was, you know, quite an amazing experience. Unfortunately, though, the whole music industry was sort of in decline during the 2000s. And basically the record labels had less and less and less money to spend on music promos. And, you know, in the end, they were offering such small amounts for doing stop motion that it was kind of time to say kind of goodbye to it, really.
It's very arduous work as well, stop motion, isn't it? Takes a long time to put it together, because I remember back in the late 90s, me and a friend were having a go at that just with one of the like small camcorders, doing a bit of stop motion and stuff with like figures and things and stuff like that, and it does take a hell of a long time to do it and to get it right as well.
It does, yeah. So then we all kind of took a hiatus and went off and did various different things. Then probably about 4 years ago, Chris got contacted by an artist called Stanley Donwood, who does all the artwork for Radiohead and Radiohead's covers. And basically he kind of said, oh, well, there's a new album coming out, which was what's it called? Moonshaped Pool. And they said, oh, we want some little 20-second Instagram videos. And Chris said, oh, I had this weird, you know, idea of doing something based on Trumpton, Camberwick Green, like the Salem witch trials. And he said, well, strangely enough, there's a track called Burn the Witch. Right. So we basically filmed a video that was homaging the style of Trumpton, and I think the turnaround was insane. It was less than 2 weeks,
right,
from the building all the sets and shooting it and finishing it.
Blimey, that is quick.
But yeah, all of a sudden, the authors started coming back in and started making music videos again.
Oh, nice. That's awesome, that is, isn't it?
Where did the change happen then when it went from going behind the camera to in front of the camera? Was that almost by accident, or because it would kind of been around the industry, or was that?
Yeah, it was. Well, strange enough, it was 2003. So basically, in between the music video jobs I was doing, I had a lot of spare time. So my flatmate at the time, there's a guy called Alan who's a sort of old school punk. He said, "Oh, I'm with an agency sort of doing background work," and he used to get quite a bit of work because he was a punk and looks like a punk. So he was like the big issue seller on EastEnders, and he was in Judge Dredd and quite a few other things. And yeah, so I did some general background work, and then obviously got the Doctor Who thing. Yeah, I was always probably a bit self-conscious, but actually being in a monster costume was quite good, because obviously you could kind of hide behind the mask as such.
Yeah, that's true. You're not playing yourself. There's not quite so much stress on you, I suppose, when you've got a big costume over you.
Yeah. Well, all actors wear masks in some form.
True. Yeah, they do.
Very deep. In terms of all the monsters that you portrayed then on Doctor Who, because I mean, like I said earlier, there's like a massive long list here. Which one would you say was the easiest to perform in as a costume performer? I say I use the term loosely because I'm not sure how easy they are.
Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult to say. I've been a humanoid character a few times. So there was a scene in the Sultaran Stratagem, and there's a couple of Marines that walk down a corridor, and there's a cloning room there, and there's two workers, Atmos workers in blue overalls,
right?
And I actually get to say a couple of lines. I say, "This area is out of bounds." Then the door opens, and I say, "It's open," which is kind of stating the obvious, but. So blue overalls, that was probably the easiest. But yeah, Daleks were quite nice because you're actually sat down.
Yeah, okay, that'd do it.
Yeah, which when we were the Cybermen, we couldn't really sit down all day with this big weight on us. Yeah. But the first time I did the Daleks was in Victory of the Daleks, and prior to that, the Dalek operators were Barnaby Edwards, Nick Pegg, Dan Barrett, and I think there was another person, but I can't remember his name. But in Victory of the Daleks, they had the Dalek paradigm, so they needed a lot more. Yeah. So pretty much all of us that played the Daleks also played other creatures. And we spent a day with Nick and Barnaby doing a Dalek 101, learn how to operate a Dalek, which isn't as easy as you might think, because you have to make sure Daleks go straight. And because they've only got 3 wheels on them, it's kind of like a shopping cart, and they do tend to drift sideways, which isn't that scary. And especially when you're going around a corner, the headstalk turns and then the body rotates to meet the headstalk. So there was a lot of putting one foot in front of the other and kind of doing the twist inside the Daleks. But the Dalek paradigms were very, very big, and took quite a long time to kind of take the heads off. So the scene on the Dalek spaceship, they did leave us in there, I think it was roughly about 3 hours. That was filmed in a tobacco factory in Cardiff in a humidor, which is just a giant steel box. So it got exceptionally hot in there. And we had long black sleeve tops to obviously kind of hide ourselves, and kind of balaclavas. And it got so hot, I actually just took all my clothes off. and I was there in my underpants. So if you watch that scene, I'm in the orange Dalek, the Dalek scientist. I'm there with my clothes off. Then eventually they said you can get the guys out the Daleks, and all of a sudden I'm kind of there with not a lot of clothes on.
No.
And then strangely enough, my friend Matt, he had exactly the same thought, and he stripped off inside of his as well.
Well, I don't blame you. It must have been absolutely boiling in there. It's like you say, when you're in a steel encased box in the Dalek, and then in a steel box in the set as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But a very surreal moment on Doctor Who, getting out of a Dalek in your underpants. Never thought of that when you was 5.
If you had to pick a favourite monster that you portrayed, what would you pick, and why?
It depends. Sometimes you would go, oh, what's the most comfortable? But probably my most favourite thing that I did was playing the headless Cyberman in the Pandorica Opens.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually know what I was doing. They said, can you go to Cardiff to be a Cyberman for the day? Then I turned up, and my friend Pete Hawkins from Millennium Effects was there, and he basically had this rusty Cyberman that had no head and an arm missing. So I put a green morph suit on underneath this, and Toby Haynes, who was the director, basically was saying that they filmed the whole scene with Amy Pond and the Cyberman with an actor who had one arm.
Right.
But they didn't get the reveal shot of the Cyberman walking around the corner and then picking the head up. So that's pretty much what we did. I had to sort of stomp around the corner and then pick the head up and plonk the head on. I think there's a video on YouTube that was on Doctor Who Confidential, kind of showing and explaining everything. So that was great fun, especially seeing myself decapitated on screen as well.
Yeah, we used to, going back to Doctor Who Confidential, we used to really enjoy those, because we like seeing behind the scenes on shows and seeing how things are put together and how it's filmed and everything. So it was a bit of a shame when they stopped doing those. They were always quite interesting to watch.
Yeah, well, it was, well, to be honest, my whole kind of interest and kind of opening into the industry was from watching making of, Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Poltergeist, all those different things. I didn't, unfortunately, I left school with little or no qualifications, and even the thought of redoing my O levels at the time, and then doing A levels, and then going to university just wasn't realistic to me. So, so pretty much, all of my kind of knowledge was watching behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
So, which obviously kind of helped me kind of greatly. So I'm always more than happy to talk about how things are done and shot, because hopefully someone else will be able to sort of gain the knowledge that I did.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can speak for Mr. P as well as myself. I think our big sort of moment with Doctor Who is when we first set foot on the set of the TARDIS at Roath Lock. So we got to go on there and do the tour. I think it was between Matt Smith had just finished and Peter Capaldi, I think, was due to start filming on that set in the September, and I think we were there in like the April or the May time when they were doing the TARDIS set tours. But that was really cool to go around all the Doctor Who experience, look at all the exhibits and all the costumes, and you could see them up close and see how everything looked, and compared to how it looks on screen. But yeah, it was lovely walking onto the set of the TARDIS.
I think the
that TARDIS set was absolutely incredible. It was, if you look at it from the outside, it looks like a kind of a giant building itself,
a wooden igloo almost. But when you're in, it's phenomenal. You actually, because it was a 360-degree set, you actually felt like, well, you were in the TARDIS, but you know what I mean. You didn't feel like you were in a set almost. And the amount of detail that was in there was incredible. And all the props and things as well. The amount of detail they put into them is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And even like just with my normal camera on my phone, just how some of the lights showed up and how the lights on the consoles and stuff, and even though it wasn't on like a fantastic camera, it just shows how well made that set was.
Yeah. Well, strangely enough, the first time I actually literally saw that TARDIS set, I was actually on the TARDIS tour myself.
Right.
Oh, right.
I have been on the set when I played one of the Whisper Men,
Yeah.
but we could not see a thing in those costumes. It was a stocking pulled over our face, so it was literally everything we saw was a blur. So we did the entire thing kind of blind, and it was a bit of a shame because obviously Richard E. Grant was there.
Right.
I'm a massive fan of his, but I could just hear his voice, and it's very difficult to kind of interact with someone if you can't see them.
Yeah, imagine.
But yeah, I ended up going on a TARDIS tour because I knew the people quite well at the Doctor Who Experience because we did a lot of live stuff there, and I basically just said to them, I said, "Oh, can I go on the TARDIS tour? Because like everybody in the whole world's seen the TARDIS set, but I haven't really seen it."
I've not seen it, but I've been on it.
Yeah.
We're gonna jump to one of our features that we do in all of our podcasts now. It's called Geeky Guys Favorites, and normally in our normal podcast series, me and Davey ask each other, but when we have a guest on, we get a guest. So what we have a list, and it could be absolutely anything in the world. It's not necessarily something to do with anything we've done. It's just something that we've got on a random list, and we get you to pick a number. I've got 3 things on the list, so I'm going to get you to pick a number 1, 2, 3, and we just ask you what your favourite of a particular thing is. Just a bit of fun. So,
Okay.
So pick a number 1, 2, or 3.
3.
Oh, I like this one. I hope you like binge watching TV.
It was very quick, that was, wasn't it?
Yeah, 3, straight in.
Straight in.
Number 3 was, we want to know what your favourite TV series for streaming is, either off like Netflix or Amazon or whatever. Have you got a favourite TV series maybe you're watching at the minute, or?
Oh, well, I just finished The Mandalorian.
Of course.
Yeah, super.
Season 2, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. Yeah, really, really good bit of filmmaking. Yeah, Jon Favreau's done an amazing job of creating something which it kind of harks back to like the old westerns, but it's kind of got like a very modern take. So I really enjoyed that. I've also enjoyed The Boys on Amazon, which was it's fantastic. It's very unapologetic about the subject matter, but in some ways it's brilliantly written, because if you did really have superheroes in real life, I think they would, really not be the best of people, because you see it a lot of the time with sports stars and actors that people that aren't said no to, it really kind of adds to their ego. So thoroughly enjoyed that. Got to try and think what else I've been binge watching recently. Watched Money Heist on Netflix.
I've not seen that.
Yeah, which was really good. It was a Spanish production, and it was very good. The only thing with it, I don't think the dubbing. I would have rather watched it in Spanish with subtitles,
right?
Because I don't think the dubbing kind of did it a lot of justice. Just in the same way Narcos, which I really enjoyed as well. Most of that was in Spanish, and you get a better intonation from someone actually speaking in a language you may not understand. But yeah, Narcos was another good series that I enjoyed.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The overdubbing sometimes isn't great, is it? In some of these foreign films, it just feels really offset, doesn't it? Even like you say, you would prefer them just to speak in their own language and have English subtitles. Yeah, it's definitely better that way.
Just on a quick personal note, a question from me. I'm just looking down the note. You played one of the monsters at the Doctor at the Proms.
Yes.
Well, first of all, which monster did you play there? And what was it like being there and listening to all that music for Murray Gold live? Because that must I never went, but it sounded phenomenal. And obviously, Murray Gold's just absolute genius. But,
yeah, well, I played one of the Whisper Men, but unfortunately, I had the same problem that I couldn't see anything. So I was on stage at the Proms in front of, I don't know, 4,000 people or whatever, but I had no visual recollection of any of this happening. But I really got a bug for the music and live performance. Probably up to then, I've never even heard a full live orchestra play. And it was phenomenal. It was so good. And then I was fortunate enough the next year to go to Australia and New Zealand performing in the Doctor Who Symphonic Spectacular, which was it was basically like an arena tour. It's kind of quite different to the Proms, but Peter Davison was there hosting the show, and various monsters would come out and interact with the audience and interact with Peter and Ben Foster, who's the conductor and the orchestrator. And yeah, I really got a feel for performing live, because a lot of the time when you're filming for television or movies, you could do something, you could rehearse something, you could be really happy with what you've done, and then when you see it on screen, it's like a split second. And you don't know if what you're doing is right. But I can really understand how actors really enjoy doing the theatre, because your whole performance can flow, and you get the feedback from the audience. So being in Australia and New Zealand for a month, and we performed in Adelaide, Brisbane, and Melbourne. That was phenomenal. Brisbane, we did this massive arena in front of 10,000 people, which was incredible. I was lucky enough to have been invited back the next year, when we performed in, where was it? Sydney, Perth, and somewhere else. I can't remember now. So yeah, that was great. And in fact, in 2015 as well, I was at the Doctor Who Festival, which was in Excel in London.
We were there.
Yeah, I probably may have seen you, or you may have seen me.
We definitely saw you. We definitely saw you on stage in costume. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we were there. It was quite nice. We liked that, didn't we? Because it was the first kind of official type Doctor Who big festival con type thing that they'd been. They'd not really been anything of that scale before.
That's right.
That was quite fun to be there and see that, because there's only been one, so that was quite nice. Yeah,
well, they did one in Australia the week after. So after I did the one in London, I literally jumped on a plane, flew to Australia, and did the one over there, which sounds exciting, but it was pretty tiring. Also, as well, I think I was a little bit rabbit in the headlights, because all I kind of thought I'd be doing is just coming out as the Maya, stomping around on stage, and that was it. And then my friend Stephen Cranford was basically hosting the panel, which was Kate Walsh and Mark Gatiss, and they said, it would be quite good if they could actually reveal me under the mask. And Stephen very kindly said, and under every mask is a hideous creature, and then reveals me.
Right, lovely.
So this was all very last thing, and my head pops off, and then I look out into the crowd, and I must have been a couple of thousand people sort of in front of me.
So
it was a little bit kind of.
Yeah, I can imagine. But,
I don't know. I've got in my notes that you do quite like listening to a podcast now and again.
Mm,
Obviously, you subscribe and listen to ours, obviously. But
obviously.
when you're not listening to ours, John, which other podcasts have you got any favourite podcasts at the minute that you're listening to?
Yeah, well, probably over the last 4 or 5 years, I've maybe developed a podcast addiction. There's far worse things that I've been addicted to in the past, so podcast is maybe not the worst. But to be honest, I probably, depending on how much I'm driving as well, I may listen to 2 to 3 hours worth of podcasts every day.
Yeah.
And I try and listen to podcasts where there's a lot of people that are a lot more clever than me, because you could always up your game. So I kind of first got into listening to podcasts because I was bored at home and I wasn't working much, and I started going on YouTube listening to director's commentary on movies.
Yeah.
And then obviously the YouTube algorithm kind of latched on to what I was doing. And then I think I saw a kind of a big Kevin Smith fan as well. So I kind of, I followed all of his movies, obviously from the beginnings of Clark's. Then I saw Kevin Smith on Howard Stern, which was quite good fun because Howard Stern's kind of the godfather of how modern radio is and podcast is actually done. It's it's kind of slightly unscripted and just an interesting conversation. Then I started kind of getting bombarded with everything. So podcasts that I started listening to a lot. I started listening to The Nerdist, Chris Hardwick's podcast.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Which is now called Idiot or ID10T. And Mark Maron's podcast as well. I always find fascinating. I've been listening to Joe Rogan's podcast for probably the last 5 years, and all of a sudden it's now literally like the biggest, most listened to thing on the planet, pretty much.
Massive, isn't it? Yeah. Massive.
And recently I've started listening to Whitney Cummings' podcast. She's an American comedian. To be honest, I pretty much listen to mostly American comedians.
Okay.
Because they don't really care what they talk about. Most comedians don't. And it's a fairly honest conversation. So Doug Stanhope's podcast, Adam Buxton's podcast is another one that I listen to, Bill Burr. So
you listen to the Richard Herring one, the Roy Lester?
No, I don't.
Podcast.
It's funny because I subscribe to so many podcasts, but it's almost like an overload.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll kind of listen to one person's podcast for a while and then kind of stop and then listen to someone else. And it almost seems to be there isn't enough hours in the day.
Let's get through them all.
But again, I just love listening to people's lives and people's stories.
Yeah.
And the more I listen to podcasts, the more you kind of realize that a lot of people kind of got to do what they do by a lot of lateral thinking, which is quite good for me because my entire life has not been linear, it's been lateral. Where the majority of people's life is they go to school, they get a qualification, they get the qualification, and they can go to university. Because they went to university, they then get this job, which is very linear. But my life has been very lateral. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I've got to try and work something out. So it's been very reassuring that a lot of hugely successful people have started life off with very little opportunities and basically figured a way out of doing what they enjoy. So
it's figuring the way to get where they want to be.
Yeah. So it's always nice to kind of hear that reaffirmed.
I do try and listen.
That.
podcasts, but I tend to listen to them when I'm at the gym, which isn't as often as it should be. I'm slightly behind on what I'm listening to at the minute. I'm several weeks behind, so I need to basically go to the gym more so I can listen to it. That's what I've concluded.
Yeah, we've actually been listening to the Delta Flyers podcast, haven't we? Garrett Wang and Robbie Duncan McNeil from starting Star Trek Voyager. They currently do a podcast where they talk about the behind the scenes of like all 7 seasons that they did with Paramount.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
it's quite cool.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because they a bit. You probably, if you were into Star Trek Voyager, you'd like it because they talk about how they film things, and Robbie McNeil's a director now, so he talks it from a director's point of view and why they perhaps did things the way they did them, and so it's quite interesting actually.
Yeah,
it's very insightful. I think I listened to Tom Hanks. He was on the Nerdist podcast a couple of years back, and literally, like Tom Hanks was just saying, like sometimes he'll do something and has no idea what he's done, if it's any good. Someone will ask him to do something and they'll use a slang word and he's like, I got no idea what you're talking about. Or they'll stick him in his trailer until the last 5 minutes of the day and yank him out to quickly do this scene. And I kind of hear all these stories and I'm like, oh God, yeah, those things happen to me. And he quite openly says, look, he goes, I'm Tom Hanks, I get a lot of shit on set. So if you get it as well, don't worry about it. We all get it. So
we all get it.
Yeah, it all of a sudden it's like a relief. You're like, oh, it's not just me. It's not that people are, thinking I'm useless. If it's happening to Tom Hanks, then it's happening to everyone. But I can understand it because most productions, like Rogue One, like if you're in charge of $1 million a day budget, if you've got to run a day over, you're responsible for blowing another $1 million. So TV and film sets can be quite mad, frantic places to be at the best of times. Yeah,
especially when, like you said, when things are costing money and people are going to be answerable for what's being spent and why you're overspending, and it's quite a stressful environment, I can imagine at times.
Yeah,
both areas. The epitome of time is money, basically.
Pretty much, isn't it? So, John, you posted an interesting photo on your Facebook earlier with one of the new style Daleks on it. Could you confirm that you've recently been doing some more work on Doctor Who?
Well, see, but I've been trying to work this out. Basically, I was one of the policemen in that photograph, which is an official BBC photograph. So there's no, it's been released. But I knew I was behind the Dalek. So there was me, a guy called Richard Roberts, Simon Carew, Matt Roman, and we were the police. And there was 4 of us. The 2 police behind had truncheons, and then I was in the front. Now, I couldn't remember which side of the Dalek I was. So I zoomed in on the photograph, and I was like, that looks like me. I recognise that big nose.
Yeah.
And the kind of scowl.
Yeah.
But my other friend, Richard Roberts, if you put us side by side, we look really similar.
Right.
So I couldn't work out if it was me or him. And then he wrote a comment on there saying, oh, that's a good shot of me behind the Dalek. And then I'm like, then I said, I thought that was me because of my big nose.
Yeah.
But I can't remember. If Rich said it was him, then it was him, and I would have been on the other side. But
yeah,
that was literally just a random pickup shot, which was actually shot in the car park of the Doctor Who studios.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I can say about it at the moment.
Yeah, we've had a couple of short teaser trailers out, I think, and looks like it's going to be quite an interesting, epic, exciting episode for New Year's Day.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, and it almost looks like it's going to be one of those, going back to Doctor Who in the 70s, where you're going to have an episode where it's not going to have the Doctor in for a lot of the episode, and people in the real world are going to have to try and sort the problem out. So it's very, very reminiscent of some of the old Pertwee Tom Baker episodes where there wasn't any to the start.
Yeah, I quite like the episodes that are set in contemporary Earth, because they're very relatable.
Yeah, definitely.
I know a lot of the Christmas episodes are generally kind of Victorian-y type snowy Christmas, which is great, but when it's actually like modern day time on Earth, it's quite a kind of nice sort of thing. It's a bit like Star Trek as well. I kind of really enjoyed the Star Trek episodes where they kind of went to an Earth-like planet, or like the holodeck stuff when they're in the Wild West and stuff like that. It's always nice to see.
It's holding up a very visceral mirror, isn't it, to the real world when they do that as well. It's, like you say, it's very relatable and, to real world problems and issues and challenges and things.
Yeah.
I think the first series of Doctor Who in 05, I would say the first new series of Doctor Who. New series in 05 was, they kept a lot of that Earth-based, and I think RTD at the time said that they wanted to, obviously, they didn't want to rush off to lots of different planets because they wanted to make sure everyone were comfortable with the new show, I think, before they... Yeah. I think that worked really well. I think that was nice.
Yeah, probably some of that was budgetary as well, but because you never know whether it's going to work or not when you do a reboot show from a few years. You don't know if it's going to take off straight away. So I suppose there's that way of looking at it as well. But yeah, it's fantastic for first new series, and obviously fantastic new Doctor with good old Chris Eccleston.
Yeah, well, to be fair, most of the alien planets and spaceships were kind of abandoned warehouses in South Wales, so dressed up to
moved from quarries near London to warehouses in near Cardiff, basically.
Quarries in Kent and South Downs over to South Wales and South West Wales and Cardiff.
So John, what's next for you going forward? We've obviously got some performance from you in the New Year special coming up, but what's next for you going forward?
Yes, so strangely enough, well, it's been a strange year, as we all know. I've probably been busier this year than I have other years. Basically, at the start of the year, when would it have been? Beginning of February, probably. End of January, beginning of February. We shot a music video for Cat Stevens, or Yusuf Cat Stevens. And it was the 50-year anniversary of his album Tea for the Tillerman, his very famous seminal album. So we did a music video for Where Do the Children Play, stop motion animated video. And he was then supposed to be going on tour and doing all these various different things. The pandemic kicked in, and then all of a sudden they couldn't shoot any live action stuff with people. So they then came back and said, can you do another music video for Father and Son? Which we then shot as well. And so we did that. And then more recently, we filmed a short segment for the John Lewis advert, this year's John Lewis Christmas advert. Which that was sort of fragmented into various live action and different animations. So we did the first bit of stop motion animation where basically they see the snowman, and then the snowman blows up the snowball into a balloon and floats off over the city. And literally about 2:00 this afternoon, I stepped out of the edit for another stop motion music video that we spent probably 12 to 14 hours a day doing over the last 3 weeks. Hence, that's why I potentially look like I've had a stroke, because of all the late nights. So that video, I'm not sure when it's coming out. I think it's going to be coming out very shortly, within the next week, which I can't talk about, but I'm sure I will post. as and when it is released. So it's been a good year. I've been probably working more than I normally like to because I'm kind of a bit lazy, I guess, or I like my free time. But I've just bought a big van that I'm now going to convert into a camper van and then drive off into the sunset around Europe.
Nice.
So that's my plan. I normally go abroad probably 6 to 7 times a year, and obviously this year it's been cut short. So I'm gonna hit not being in this country big time when the restrictions are lifted.
Yeah, hopefully make it a lot better next year and get to all the destinations that you missed out on. Max it out in the new camper van.
Yeah, you can't get out of the country at the moment.
I do have a Volkswagen T5 camper van. Unfortunately, I wanted to sell it to buy the new one. I bought a big Citroen Relay. Unfortunately, I needed some work done, and I've now ended up. I've got 2 camper vans. Unfortunately, selling the old one was supposed to pay for the new one, so I've dug myself into a hole. I've got 2 lovely vans, but no money. So if anybody wants a really nice Type 5 Volkswagen camper van, I've got one going. It comes with lots of free signed photographs as well.
Right.
Playing monsters.
Yeah, we'll have to post it on Geeky, guys. Get it advertised for you. Get it sold. Hashtag sell John's van.
And anyone listening in America, when we say camper van, we mean it's like a smaller RV, basically.
Yeah, I think. Well, I spent last 2 months literally glued to YouTube watching various builds. I think they're called Type Bees in America.
There you go.
And it's my new one's a Ram ProMaster, which is basically a Fiat Ducato, a Citroen Relay, and a Peugeot Boxer. It's all the same vehicle.
All right. Okay. Cool. Well, John, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us tonight. I know you've been.
You're welcome, and thanks for reminding me, because my brain has been so full of shooting music videos. I've been saying, remind me the day before, and then remind me the day. Like literally, I set my alarm for 7:45, and then between 7 and 7:45, I literally forgot again about doing this. So
that's all right.
I've had so much brain power used for thinking about other things. Yeah,
that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Yeah, well, I'll have to go back and watch some of those music videos you've worked on and check them out.
Cool. Yeah, and another one coming soon.
Yeah, the John Lewis advert. Keep an eye out for that as well.
Yeah, well, I think that's been and gone. They kind of launched it a month or so ago, and
it has been out. It's not been quite as prominently advertised, I don't think, this year as in previous years. But
it'll be on YouTube.
Yeah, it's definitely been out. It was quite good, actually. It was quite different. Good luck with all the projects going forward as well. We obviously look forward to seeing you on Doctor Who on on New Year's Day, because we are on Christmas Day, in fact, right now. You can also catch all of what John's doing on his website at jondavey.com, and we'll stick a link to that.
Cool. It's sort of under construction at the moment. I had someone build it for me, but I got so busy with work, it's kind of ground to a halt, which I need to get back onto. Or my social media, which is at Jon Davey 007, JONDAVEY 007. And it's generally me on my electric skateboard flying around the local parks and stuff.
We'll on our website, and we'll tweet them out with when.
Put it in the show notes. Yeah, it's usually you painted out your selfie stick, isn't it?
Yeah, the invisible selfie stick.
Invisible selfie stick. Around the parks, which is always looks cool.
So, and for everything that we're doing, of course, you can, of course, find everything at geekyguys.co.uk. And if you want to know more about our podcast, including the normal Tea Break podcast series, it's geekyguys.co.uk/podcasts.
That's the one.
Once again, thank you for doing this, John, and we will look forward to maybe catching up with you at some point in the future.
Sure.
Yeah,
not
and have
problem.
a nice Christmas and great New Year's if you can.
Yeah, well, I'm getting into the Christmas spirit around my girlfriend's house.
Hey, lovely.
That tree went up about 3 weeks ago. She was like, "It's going up. I don't care."
Going up. Don't blame it. We had ours up at work earlier this year. Need a bit of cheer, don't we?
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll catch you later.
Brilliant.
Cheers,
Thank
John.
you very much.
Cheers, mate.
Bye.